All right, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. The show is brought to you by 49 Tire, driven by the Continental Tires. 49 Tire, Richland, Mississippi, 49tire.com. Show is also brought to you by Went McGee, the mortgage man. He'll shop the best rates for you. You're buying a new home, condo, house, refinancing, mortgagemanms.com. If you're buying a place at Portico in Starkville, new development, 3 minutes from Dudy Noble Field, where guys like Will Clark, Rafael Palmeiro, Jeff Brantley, Jake Mangum, among others, have played. Not bad to wake up in March knowing that you're 3 minutes from Dudy Noble Field. Portico development right behind the Hilton Garden Inn and Suites in Starkville, Mississippi. Zero lot line home starting at $290,000. Portico development, Starkville, Mississippi. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in our friend Steve Palazzolo, ProFootballFocus.com, NFL insider. Steve joins us on the Abita Andy Gator guest line. And, Steve, well, let's start with Who Dat Nation. And the Saints play the Falcons this weekend, and Drew's coming off ribs and lung injury, and, you know, we're just not sure what's going to happen there over the next 4 to 6 weeks. What do you think Sean Payton is looking for, and do you really believe that this is a job interview for Jameis Winston going forward?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. You know, I'm calling it Tamus, by the way. It's going to be a combination of Taysom Hill and Jameis, I believe. I think you're going to see even more of the Taysom Hill package, I think, you know, with Jameis starting. But, you know, again, the Saints, are we all assuming this is it for Drew this season? You know, hopefully he can at least get back out on the field, make a little bit of a playoff run. But if this is it, yeah, the Saints have to start looking forward. And, you know, Sean Payton's been so complimentary of Taysom Hill to the point where it does feel like he's talking him up as the next guy. But there's other evidence that when he has a Teddy Bridgewater and now when he has a Jameis Winston, those guys are the backups. So I do think, you know, if Jameis shows well, whether it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever he has an opportunity to show, yeah, this is a chance for Jameis to maybe be the next guy in New Orleans. And he's he is the polar opposite of Drew Brees. So we'll see how that fits into the Saints system this week.
Oh, I don't have a lot. Well, I have confidence that Sean can figure this out and win some games just because he's so good. But I kind of think at this point, Jameis Winston is who he is. How do you see it?
So Jameis is what he is, and I wrote an article about this last year on PFF.com. So he is who he is, and what he is using PFF terms. We grade every single player on every play. He's a guy that has a high percentage of positives and a high percentage of negatives. So it's the opposite of Brees, who annually leads the league in lowest percentage of negatives, just doesn't miss throws. But it's not like he's a league leader in positively graded throws. He also he's a guy that will, you know, take check downs and screens and short stuff and allow his playmakers to do work. So with Jameis, a volatile throw-for-throw quarterback, that can lead to an incredible range of outcomes. They could be really good. They could be really bad. But I think if you take that skill set that Jameis has or style that Jameis has and you put him with a good play caller like Sean Payton and now a good group of playmakers. You know, they haven't had this group the entire season when Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are out there together and Jared Cook. I mean, they've got decent – and Kamara, of course. They have guys to throw to. And I think Jameis's volatile style could lead to fireworks on the positive end, right, if they could just, you know, rein in some of the negatives. So I'm not ready to write Jameis off just because of his style. I'm fascinated to see how this is going to work with the Saints and if Sean Payton will play to his skill set a little bit more and actually attack with the ball down the field more than they were able to do with Drew Brees under center.
I find it hard to believe that Sean Payton really believes that he can make Taysom Hill into a even top 15 to 20 QB week in, week out in the NFL. Steve?
So I would view it like this. You know, I use this for Kyler Murray quite a bit. Kyler Murray last week with the Arizona Cardinals had one of his worst passing games of the season. The Monday night game that Kyler played against Dallas a few weeks back, he was like 9 for 20-something, and it wasn't his best passing game. But the offense still produced in part because of his legs. So if you do have a run-first quarterback, and Kyler's completely different from Taysom, obviously, as a runner, But if you have a quarterback that at least can, whether it's in the design running game or from scrambling, they kind of create this baseline, this floor for your offense. Even on their worst days passing, the offense can still move the ball. So I could see Sean Payton maybe thinking along those lines and saying, well, we're going to completely change our offense. We're running QB power and counter and the play action that comes off of that. And Taysom's got a good enough arm, and I'll make him into something. Like, I could see Sean Payton talking himself into this. But overall, I agree with you. It's going to be quite challenging to take a 30-year-old H-back / special teamer / quarterback and spin him up into a top 15 quarterback. I do think it's going to be a challenge, but I could also see in Sean Payton's mind where he's talking himself into it and saying, I'm just going to run a completely different offense, and I'll get him there.
Oh no! I need a free agent coming into New Orleans in the offseason.
I would do both. I mean, I would definitely grab somebody else and try to develop him, but I could see Sean talking himself into it.
Sure.
You?
Oh yeah, and it would be a mistake. As good as he is, and as much as he has even improved, in my opinion, as a head coach the last 6 or 7 years, that's a bad play. He needs to go get one of these dudes that he can make a lot better. That can throw the ball. I wish it'd be Dak. I don't think it will be, but there'll be several others, as you and I have discussed. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, NFL Insider. He joins us on the Abita Andy Gator guest line. And he mentioned Kyler Murray. We have Murray and Russell Wilson tonight as our NFL game, which is exciting. Blake has a question for Palazzolo.
Yeah, Steve, when you mentioned guys that move the football and run the football. So there's Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and then I guess Russell Wilson for the most part. I mean, he's really used his legs well. What is there one of those guys that you lean more towards? Lamar's really struggled. I don't know if that's Greg Roman and his scheme. I don't know if that's defenses getting wise to what Lamar doesn't do well yet. What is the actual mold of running quarterback that you look for in terms of how much they actually use their legs?
I mean, just using those four guys, they're all so different and unique. And again, I think if you have one of those players, you just play to their skill set, right? So with Lamar, I wrote about this right when he came out of the draft. I said, look, he's not accurate. He's not going to sit there 50 times a game and pick you apart with pinpoint accuracy. But if you use him in the design running game, you use him, to run QB power where he's going to keep it and actually be part of your running game, then he'll have success because the passes that come off of that run action are going to be more open. And then you don't have to be accurate. Plus, Lamar's just such a dynamic open field runner, agility, speed, and all that stuff. So he's a design run type of guy. Kyler and Lamar doesn't love to scramble, believe it or not. He doesn't like to just run around and make plays, but it's more of the design running game. With Kyler, they're getting a little bit more. They're getting both out of him this year. They're using him in the design game. He's dynamic as well. We've seen it with 9 rushing touchdowns so far. But he's still going to win from the pocket a little bit more often. Josh Allen's more of a scrambler. You can use him again to keep it every now and again, but it's more his athleticism on dropbacks that has been really difficult for defenses to defend. And then Russ's ability is just picking his spots. They're not built. He's a pass-first quarterback. He's going to win from the pocket more often than not. But, oh, by the way, when he gets outside the pocket, he's going to create big plays. So, I mean, I think the Russell Wilson style is the most favorable one because he's the best passer out of the group. And then the running just becomes a complement. But I like the fact that a Kyler or a Lamar or an Allen, if they have a bad day, they might still pick up 70 yards on the ground and find the end zone. Whereas, say, a Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen a couple of years ago or, Kirk Cousins, if they have a bad day passing, your offense is sunk. You're pretty much not doing anything unless your running back goes for 200. So I think all those guys just have different styles, but you still always have to try to win from the pocket first.
How concerned should people be with the way that Lamar Jackson is playing? Or, I mean, is this what he is, throwing the ball, or is there more that they can do as far as he's still young and reps and development, Steve?
Yeah, so I think too many people look at quarterbacks and just they think of it like Madden, and they think the quarterback's just going to get better every year, right? And in Madden they come in as a 75, and then they're a 78, and then they're an 83, and before you know it they're a 92, and that's what they are. Quarterback play is not just linear, and so Lamar having such a good second season didn't mean, wow, look at this. He's an MVP in year 2. He's going to get better in year 3, 4, 5, 6. It is a constant battle to stay consistent, to handle what the NFL is going to adjust to you and throw at you and everything. So I think Lamar is definitely closer to this than, what he was last year. Last year, everything just went so well. The running game was spectacular. The pass game off of it was a perfect complement. This year, I think we're seeing they're missing tight ends. They don't have the same weapons that they had last year. And the running game hasn't been as efficient, even though they have a lot of yards. So I think Lamar is closer to this, but he's still more than capable of producing. I just don't think you would expect MVP caliber numbers. He had 9% of his passes found the end zone last year. That's absurd. Like, that was automatically going to regress this year. So a lot of things that he did last year were just unsustainable. So he's still a really good quarterback, but we're in that cat and mouse game with the NFL right now. How is he going to adjust? How are the Ravens going to adjust? Because it's not going to be, it's not going to look as easy as it did last year when he won the MVP.
But he's got great people around him, right? I mean, you're talking about a great owner, great front office, a Hall of Fame coach, or we at least think so. Lamar has more advantages than probably 25 other guys in the league, or you disagree with that?
No, I agree with that. I think, John Harbaugh's done a really good job. He kind of went from a conservative coach to almost a poster child for just going for it on fourth down. And last year we saw the Ravens, when they went for it on fourth down, they got it more often than not. That was also difficult to sustain. So all of a sudden you just have more downs to play with. Greg Roman's been a great offensive coordinator, but he has had offenses with Colin Kaepernick a few years back that the NFL adjusted to. So he does have to find a way to adjust back to what the NFL has been doing. But overall, the situation's really good there.
Okay. All right. So that who he is surrounded by is a factor, right, as far as what he is and his production level, starting with owner, front office, head coach, so on, Roman. If you dropped Dak Prescott with the Ravens, I'm not saying they run the same offense, but he's surrounded with this winning culture. And what Ozzie Newsome is left in all this stuff, Biscotti and so on. Who would you take if you had all the stuff that the Ravens have in place? Would you take Lamar or Dak?
Oh man, that's close. So I haven't seen I've seen them with Lamar is the thing, and I've seen them build an offense around his skill set. I would assume that they would do the same thing with Dak. It wouldn't be nearly as much running. I've always thought that you want to have Dak run 4, 5, 6 times a game, pick your spots, and steal 3 or 4 first downs, right? And that's his best use as a runner. But he's still going to win from the pocket a little bit more. I think I don't know. I like what I've seen with them and Lamar. I'd probably lean Dak in part because I'm on Mississippi radio, so I'll lean Dak for now with you guys. But that's trusting that Harbaugh and Roman and the whole organization is going to build around his skill set more. They would need better receivers, though, right now. Lamar did a lot without name receivers or tight ends. They built the system around him. They created open throws, but it's not like he's got incredible playmakers. I think that's coming back to bite just a little bit this year for the Ravens.
All right, fair enough there. So it'd be super, super close with Dak and Lamar if you gave them all the Ravens stuff, culture, and everything that they put in place. Blake mentioned Blake, you mentioned Cam Newton. He kind of is. I think you're advancing what Steve Palazzolo is saying, PFF.com, in that at some point Cam is what he is, and he just wasn't going to be any more accurate or refined from the pocket. Is that where you're going?
His MVP season was his best season, not indicative of growth.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, I said, look, Cam Newton has 8 years in the NFL. One was exceptional. One was that MVP season. And everything else, he was a middle-tier quarterback. That's just where he's played. Throw for throw, that's what he's been. And he's another Jameis-y type of volatile quarterback. And I have a soft spot for those guys. A guy like Jameis, a guy like Carson Palmer, who I would say he makes great throws. He misses a lot of throws. But those guys have those like 1 or 2 outlier seasons, right? So Carson Palmer was 2015. He was an MVP candidate. He looked incredible for the Cardinals. That was the same year Cam did win the MVP. He looked incredible that one year. That's why I always lean toward it. I think Jameis has at least one or two of those years in him where everything goes right. All those great throws show up in one season, and he cuts down on the negatives just enough, right? But Cam, I think you look at his career and you say, okay, you have to maximize his value with the run game like the Patriots have. He's not going to drop back 40 times and beat you, and he's a middle-class type of quarterback or passer at least, middle-class passer. And you have to know that. You can't say, well, he was an MVP. We're going to get back to that. It's clearly the outlier in his 9-year career at this point.
Okay. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, super site on football, NFL and college for that matter, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. He joins us on the Abita Andy Gator guest line. Breeze is out. Of course, Dak's out. We've got some other injuries throughout the league. But, again, some of the studs are still rolling. Rodgers, Russell, Mahomes, and some others. Blake?
Yeah, if you're Sean Payton and you're going to probably pick in the 20s, I would think.
Ooh.
If you're picking in the 20s and Drew Brees is done and you're not sold on 30-30 Club award winner Jameis Winston, who do you pick in the 20s at quarterback, assuming we think 6 guys are going in the first round like we've talked about, or if you go free agency, who is your free agent target?
Well, I mean, Dak is the prize of free agency until he's locked up, right? So,
but they can't.
Dallas makes a move.
They can't afford him, can they?
Probably not. I don't know what the Saints are going to do. I mean, I think they almost have to. I don't know what cap magic they're expected to perform, but they're also going to lose a ton of players either way. A guy like Marcus Williams at safety, and it's really going to be tough to just lock up that entire draft class from a few years ago. That was great. I mean, I really think they're going to be in this, like, bring in a Sam Darnold, take a flyer on him, take a flyer on a Marcus Mariota, or bring Jameis back. The same, I think those guys are capable quarterbacks, capable mid-tier-ish type of quarterbacks in a Saints system that can perform. I think that's where they have to land, at least now, until they try to get out of salary cap hell. And it might be a combination of a Darnold, a Jameis, and a Taysom Hill, right? I mean, we'll see how this experiment goes in the next few weeks. But, yeah, it's going to be really challenging for the Saints. I think draft-wise, I don't know if Kyle Trask or Mac Jones are really top half of the first-round type of players. I think Trask is probably bottom half of the first or closer to day 2. So maybe end of the first round, you grab one of those guys and see what you can mold there. But, yeah, it's going to be a challenge for the Saints given all the different roster turnover plus just figuring out the QB situation.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Aaron Rodgers is still a top 3 QB in the league. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do love your approach theory, Steve, that franchises need to continue to draft QBs. I mean, they're just that important. So having said that, was the Jordan Love draft pick in the first round for the Packers the right play? Or should they have, drafted a wide receiver or a tight end weapon for Aaron or an edge rusher? How do you see that?
Yeah, that's one of those situations where, like, I don't hate the process of getting a quarterback, but the Packers are in such a unique situation, I think, where they need, like, Rodgers is still capable of playing top 5, top 3 football, and you might only have a 3-year window with him. And you look at that roster, and it's like, well, we've got Devontae Adams and nobody else. And Rodgers had not produced at a high level since he had Jordy Nelson and other weapons to throw to. So you almost had to, I think, add more playmakers, to the Packers. And then there's the fact that I just think Jordan Love, was a questionable first-round pick in general. I thought there was so much volatility to him. Now, the NFL's done a nice job the last few years of taking arm talent type of guys and getting the most out of them. Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, guys that felt volatile and had quote-unquote upside. Those hadn't been working in the past. Those are the guys that were all busts in previous years, and they're starting to work out a little bit more. So maybe the Packers are onto something and they can sit and develop Jordan Love. So we'll know more once he finally gets to play. But my initial instinct was definitely add more playmakers and try to maximize this last little stretch of Rodgers' run here in Green Bay.
That makes sense. Okay. Tonight's game, DK and Russell Wilson against Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins?
I think it's going to be great. Wilson's coming off his worst 2 games of the season by far, but I don't think that'll be a trend. I think he'll bounce back. I think he'll spread the ball around, make some plays. Looks like Tyler Lockett's questionable now. That DK got not shut down, but he didn't do a whole lot against the Cardinals except for track down Budda Baker. So I'd expect more from him in this one. But the Cardinals have those big, tall corners that match up better with a DK than, say, they match up with Lockett. So I think the other receivers are better on paper for Seattle. But I think after last week where DK didn't do a whole lot, I think they're going to try to force him the ball early in offense.
Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, joins us on the Beta Andy Gator guest line. And we have, man, that's fun tonight. Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson going head-to-head. Blake, do you have a fantasy question or something else?
Well, I do want to say tonight's matchup, I mean, how much does this dictate or does it impact what the 49ers are thinking with Garoppolo when you look at what Kyler Murray is for the next 10 years,
I like it.
Russell for at least 5 or 6, and you don't really know what McVay's doing with golf in L.A.?
Man, that is a really good question because I always throw this mid-tier quarterback phrase out there, and Jimmy Garoppolo's clearly there. I mean, Jared Goff is there too. I mean, that's what they are, right? And then you say, okay, when you have a Sean McVay calling plays for you, Jared Goff can perform, or you have Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan made Matt Schaub look really good, or that system made Matt Schaub look really good. It's made Jimmy Garoppolo look really good. But the one time Kyle Shanahan had the quote-unquote top 8 guy was Matt Ryan. And he had 15 was a struggle, but 2016, Matt Ryan almost broke the league and won MVP statistically, right? And that was Kyle Shanahan with a top 8, top 5 type of quarterback, and he turned him into an MVP candidate. So I think Shanahan might start to lean that way. He also had RG3, right? The Shanahans had RG3 in that rookie season, and they built the run game around him, and the play action game was on steroids that year and creating a ton of explosive plays. So I could see Kyle Shanahan thinking, man, I gotta compete with Russ and with Murray, and I gotta keep up with it, and it's going to be tough to do with Garoppolo. Because if you look at last year, they're like a throw away from winning the Super Bowl, but so many things had to go right for the 49ers to get there last year. Having a better quarterback allows you to not have all the other stuff be as right. It just gives you more of a baseline and more margin of error.
That's it? Oh, man, that was 22 minutes. I thought we were like 15 minutes in. All right. I was about to ask Palazzolo if Matt Ryan was a dinosaur in what the game is today and other quarterbacks like that.
No, he's still pretty good.
Okay.
He's okay. And he's protected in a dome, so that always helps.
Bam. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Follow Steve on Twitter, too. He's a great follow, at PFF_Steve. Have a good weekend, my man. We appreciate it, Steve.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, NFL insider, but more importantly, NFL quarterback insider, because that's what is the 24-ounce New York strip every weekend for us while we're watching the Red Zone and seeing all the quarterbacks play. You got DK Metcalf tonight on your TV and the Seattle Seahawks. We'll be back in a minute.